All right, good morning. It is 9:30 on Friday, September 16th. This is Jeff Scott. The class is AWD 1100, C# programming. Morning, Grant. You're the first one in here, so I'm just starting up right now. So what I'm going to do today is I am going to work through the pretest that we did basically for chapters 1 through 5, but I'm going to go in and add exception handling, okay? And I'm going to do both of them. I'm going to try to use those built-in functions that were not built in, but the ones that were shown in our textbook on page 213. I'm not going to go back to that page because I hate just having to flip around all the time. But just so you remember, the first one that was in here was this C# app. As it says, it prints out, you can either go from Fahrenheit to centigrade, or to Celsius rather, or Celsius to Fahrenheit. So rather than having to rewrite all that stuff, I'm just keeping it. But this is what we're concerned with now. If, excuse me, if there's no value entered into the text box, we should have some kind of an error come up. All right, I'm not that concerned with me writing exactly what's shown here. That's not a big thing. All right. Now, if we put in a value in here and we click Fahrenheit to centigrade, we should get this. Or if we put in this value and click centigrade to Fahrenheit, we should get this type of thing. The clear button should work. The exit button should work. If we put something non-numeric in either one of the text boxes, we should get a message saying that basically, non-numeric input is not allowed. And finally, I think that we had a couple constants, like this was negative 212 to positive 212, and this was negative 100 to positive 100. So that's what we care about right now and what we're going to be trying to do in here. So I don't want to spend a lot of time, a lot of wasted time, I should say. So let me jump in, try that again. And let's jump right into Visual Studio, okay? Now, I'm going to bring up the one that I created before. So this is, and of course it looks like I brought the wrong project up because this is all pretest 1. Yep, number and letter grade. Okay, I'll tell you what, sorry about that. Give me about a minute. I have to find where I've got pretest number 2 because like I said, I didn't want to rewrite it. So let's see where it is. It's not it. All right, I'm going to bring this one up. It'll be just a second here, but let's see which one I've got here. Oh, my goodness. Great. Okie dokie. So it's telling me that the project file cannot be found. Well, that isn't good. That's all right. We're going to work around it right now, and I'm going to show you how we're going to work around it. All right. And that is by doing this. For some reason, like I said, I thought I brought up my copy that had everything on it, but it doesn't. So I found another one, and this has got the stuff on it for number 2. So it's got all this stuff in it, and all that should be working. So let's very, very quickly check and make sure that this works in its current format. Then we'll just go on. So again, if I leave that off, bats cannot be empty. If I do put in something non-numeric, okay, okay, put in that. Let's see. So if I put in 10 here and I put in 44 here, which shouldn't be possible. Yep. Okay, that all works. So if I put in 3 there, all right. 300. Okay, that's all working. Okay, so let's take what we have and talk about what we want to change, how we want to change it, etc. So the way that this thing was written originally, I'm not going to go over the comment. I think you can look at that yourselves. I took that right from the test itself. All right. But when we go down here and we look, what do we have? Well, the first thing we have here is we have 3 different variables that are global. There is really no hard and fast rule on how many globals you should or should not have in a program. That said, you should try to strive to have as few global variables in a program as possible. When you have global variables, what can happen is you can have side effects. All right, what's a side effect? I'm going to show it to you in just a moment. But sometimes you want to have a side effect. Sometimes you don't want to allow a side effect. Since this variable right here, this total number of averages, since it's defined outside of any method, that means it's global to this program. What that means is I can change it anywhere in the program, even places technically I shouldn't be allowed to change it. All right. So any of these 3 variables that are here, I could potentially change anywhere in the program. That's not really a good programming practice. All right. It's not that it hurts so much, but again, it's not considered a good programming practice. All right. So the first thing we have here is validate at bats not empty. Okay. And what is that doing? Well, it's right here. Okay. So this in many ways is very similar to that is present thing that we looked at earlier. So in order to be able to use this, is present thing, I want to make a couple changes. First, I want to come over to my at bats and I want to go down to my tag and I want to type in there at bats. All right, so that one's now set. Then I want to go over to my hits. I want to go to my tag and I want to put in hits. Now those 2 tags are set. Those are the only 2 controls on this whole form for which I have to go and reset or set a tag. Everything else I believe in here is set. And I'm looking, and of course I never changed the name of my form, so let's do that. And I will just rename it FRM average. Okay, yes, I want to change it. So now everything's been renamed. All right, now I'm going to go because I made copies of that code that is on page 213 in the book. I made copies of it. All right, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to grab this thing that was called is present. Okay, and I'm going to try right now to replace this validate at bats not empty. I'm going to try to replace that with is present. Now, you might say, okay, why? Because I want to be able to call the is present both for at bats and for hits. So I'm going to be able to take approximately in here 15 or 16 lines here, and then pretty much the same 15 or 16 lines right here that we do the same thing for hits, and I want to be able to replace it. I want to be able to replace it with one routine. All right, and I'm just going to put it right underneath this one that's right here. So public static bool is present text box, text box. So text box is going to be the name of the text box that I'm passing in. All right, so the text box that I'm passing in is either going to be TXT hits or TXT at bats. All right, so what I want to do in here is rather than call this validate at bats not empty, I'm going to just comment that out and I'm going to say keep going equal just is present. So is present, and I have to pass into that txt at bats. Okay, now I'm not saying it works yet. We have to go back and look at it, but notice there are no errors in my call to the routine. All right, so I'm going to come down here again to this is present. All right, this is saying if there's no text in there, what do I want to do? Well, I want to say that the tag is a required field. All right, so this will come in here and say at bats is a required field. All right, and then I don't have a title. They had one in the book, but I don't have one, so I'm going to make one right now. And I'm going to say text box dot tag dot upper. I thought it would take an upper. Well, maybe it won't. That's fine. And then we're going to say plus was not provided. Something like that. All right. And technically, when you leave it blank, it's an error. So I will just add to this message box dot, I'm sorry, not message box. Yeah, message box buttons dot okay. And what am I looking for? Does not exist in the current. Let's just leave it the way it is. All right, I'll pretty it up in a little bit. All right, so let's see. So if I did this right, what should happen now, okay, is if I put something in and there, if I run the program right now and I leave the at bats empty, it should come up and give me this error right here. Okay, so let's see if that works. Okay. So it says at bats was not provided. At bats is a required field. And where did it get that from? Again, at bats is required field. At bats was not provided. All right. Now, if I wanted to be real whatever about this, okay, this text box.tag, I could create a new variable. And I could come in here and say string AB equals text box.tag dot. Why it should take uppercase, but it's not taking upper. I thought there's something goofy with that, so that's fine. Let's just say this. We'll say text box dot tag, like we said, that's fine. And then let's see on the next line. Can we say AB equals AB dot to upper? All right. So now I should be able to come in here and say AB. Right? And my guess is this will need a dot to string on it. Okay. Not like this is a big thing, but now it will say at bats and it'll all be in uppercase. So let's see if that changed worked. So save all, let's run it. We'll leave the at bats empty. All right, there it says at bats was not provided. At bats is a required field. So that first one worked. All right, so I've now been able to go in and I have been able to replace validate at bats not empty with is present. All right, the next one is numeric. All right. So one of the things that was on page 213 was an is int type of thing. So they put it in as an is decimal, but I will change it. Oh, there is an is int right there. So we want to make sure that it's a number. So again, I'm going back to that code and I'm going to put it in here. What do I mean? Well, we just added this is present. All right, and right underneath the is present, I'm adding an is int 32. So again, I need to pass in the text box. All right, so we come in here and now I want to replace, so we replace this line, this validate line with this. Okay, oops. Now we want to replace this line. So I'm going to say keep going equals is int 32. And again, I have to pass in 32. I have to pass in txt at bats. Okay. No errors. Oh, there we go. All right. So what are we going to do here? The same kind of thing. So there's the is present. Here is the. Okay. So what are we trying to do right here? We've got int number. All right. And what we're saying here is, wow, if this works, okay, we want to put the results in number and return true. In other words, it worked. In other words, we put an integer in there. Otherwise, we want to say that that must be an integer. All right. And again, for the title, I'm going to change it just like I changed the last one. And I want to say, now I want to say at bats must be an integer. All right. Okay. So I'm going to come in here just like I did before. I'm going to do string AB equals text box dot tag dot toString, and I'm going to say AB equals AB dot toUpper. All right, that'll be allow me to put that in uppercase. All right, and then up here we're just going to again put in the same kind of thing. So I'll put in AB. All right. So again, this should say at bats must be an integer, and this will now say at bats we'll say the same thing here. So must be an int. Okay, we'll set the focus and we'll return. Well, let's do one more thing. All right, let's say text box dot text. Let's clear it out. So if there's garbage in there, it will now be cleared out. All right. Now I'll have to go back and make one more change in a minute, but I want to see if this works. So I'm going to do a file, save all. Again, we have now removed that check and we're replacing it with this check right here. All right. So let me go in and run the program. And now you already saw it. If I left it blank, we got this at bats not provided is a required field. But now if I put in something non-numeric, now I'm getting at bats must be an int. At bats must be an integer. And when we click, we're clearing it out and there's our focus. Now, I mentioned that I have to make one more change and think about the change we have to make here. All right. This thing right here is just a variable that we're creating right there that's called number. And that number is either going to represent the at-bats or it's going to represent the hits. Okay, it's going to represent one or the other. But right now, this is not going to work at all because the way that it's working, the way that it is in here, all right, is, well, if it was good, in other words, if we were able to do the parse, we just have a local variable number that holds this. So I'm going to come in here, probably a little more text than I need to write, but I'm going to type if text box equal txt at bats. I'm sure I gave it the wrong name, but that's fine. We'll fix that in a second. Then at bats equals number. Let's see what I did wrong here. So what's the name of the text box? This text box is, no, that's right, txt at bats. All right. So if text box dot name equal txt at bats, well, it doesn't like that either. We're going to fix it. An object reference is required for the non-static field. An object reference is required. Okay. Let's see. This is what was inside of it. Okay. All right. I'm brain farting right now and I don't know why, but let's see if we can still figure this out. All right, we're passing in the text box. There's the text for the text box. I should be able to do this and put in name. And it's not giving me an error there. Gets or sets the name of the control. That is the right name. Static field. This is not the way I envision this period going. So I'll tell you what, for right now at least, let's leave this off and see if this is going to be a problem later or not. What I'm trying to get across to you is this. So far, we have replaced checking to see if something is numeric with this one. We have replaced checking to see if something is there or is not there with that one. And again, you might say, so what? Well, let's talk about why that's important. All right, because now we've got the keep going equals is present right there. All right. So when I go down later on and I start checking my other stuff, so in other words, there was is present or validate at bats not empty. I also want to validate that hits is not empty. So I can now replace this with that, but it's going to be txt hits. And again, here's where the magic starts to happen. All right. And what do I mean? All right. Well, what I mean is now this whole routine validate that at bats not empty. I can now comment out that whole routine and I can find the other one that's down here that says hits not empty. Notice it's gray, which means that nobody's calling it anymore. So now I can go and comment that out. What should end up happening when we get done here, is we should end up probably cutting about 25% or more of the code we had in here out of here now. All right. So now we've got the not empty for the hits and we've got the is present. All right. So this was the is present for hits. All right. And now for the is numeric, I can go and replace that one as well as the one I just replaced. So I can come in here and say this. All right. And I don't need this routine anymore. So now I've removed this entire routine, validate at bats not empty. So I'm going to highlight all of it and hit delete. It's gone. All right. And I'm going to go down to where we've got validate at bats is numeric. We can remove that one. I'm going to go down and find my validate hits is numeric, and I can get rid of that one. Oh, that's hits not empty. Yeah, that's fine. And the validate hits is numeric. I can get rid of that one. So what I've just done is I have taken, and by writing one routine, I've replaced two routines. So I wrote this routine and I replaced validate at bats is not empty and validate hits is not empty. Then we went down to this one, and in one routine, we replaced validate hits is numeric and validate at bats is numeric. All right. So what's left? Well, when we look through here, so again, we've replaced this one, we've replaced this one, and now we need this is positive thing. All right. Again, if I go back and look in my stuff, there's a range. All right. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to grab that routine. So there's my is present. There's my is in 32. And now I can have my is within range. All right. Again, is this that big a thing? Well, it's all about trying to save the amount of text that you have in here. That's all. All right. This title I'm just going to get rid of, so I'm just going to put in here for right now the empty string. We'll fix that in a minute. So this is the within range. So we need to provide a minimum amount, which is going to be 0, and we need to provide a maximum amount. And that maximum amount rather should be whatever we put into, all right. If it's hits, the maximum amount should be at bats. All right. And if it's at bats, we can make up something. It doesn't matter. But what we're doing in here is we're making sure that whatever we entered was within range. Now, before we do this, this can now become an int, and this can now become an int. Why? Because we are dealing with the number of at-bats you had or the number of hits that you had. So with the number of at-bats or the number of hits, they're whole numbers. So they should be integers, which means that when we're doing this, we don't want to do a convert to decimal. We want to do a convert to int 32. All right. So we will have the same thing we did before as far as that the thing, you know, whatever this is to string, so we can put it in our title in a minute. Here, this will be int, oops, try that again, int number, and we're going to attempt to convert what was in there. All right. If it's less than the minimum or it's greater than the maximum, it's an error. All right, so it must be between the minimum and the maximum. And we'll just put a message in here that says out of range input provided. Something like that. We'll set the focus. We can also go in and clear that text box out. So text box dot text equals double quote, and we return false. All right. Okay. So now this thing in here, this at bats is positive. We don't need that anymore. Validate hits is within range. We won't need that anymore. And you can hopefully start to see we've probably cut a good 50, 60 or more lines in here. Now we've got that. We're going to have to fix that, but we'll fix all of these right now. All right. So we have replaced this one, validate at bats not empty, with our more generic method is present for at bats. Then we replaced our validate at bats is numeric, and we've replaced that with a more generic is int at bats. So this one has got to be replaced too, and that'll remove the first error that we get. So let's bring that in here. And we will change this to keep going equal, and I don't remember the name of that, unfortunately. It is called is within range. So keep going, equals is within range, and we have to pass in, this is our at bats, so txt at bats. All right. And we need a minimum and a maximum. Well, the minimum is going to be 0. And the maximum in this case is going to be whatever we put in, whatever value we put in for hits. Let's see, we're validating the at-bats. What is the maximum? There really isn't any. You could put in 1 billion if you wanted to. All right, let's make up our own maximum. I'm just making this up. So we'll say 10,000. I don't think any baseball player has ever been up more than 10,000 at bats. All right, so we've got that now. And now we should be able to go in and make the same changes in here. So this is that within range here. So we will replace this one. All right, we'll replace that with this. But we will have to pass in txt hits. All right, and now the maximum in here is whatever we put in for the number of at-bats that you had. So at-bats, all right, that would be the maximum. Now there's a problem here. All right, it's going to say that it is not known in this current context. Why? Because what we did when we came in here and we started working with the hits and the at-bats and all the other good stuff is we didn't really even come in and play with that stuff until we got down here, until we figured out the average. All right, so what does that mean? All right, I'm going to show you exactly what that means. I'm going to grab these 2 lines of code right here, and I'm going to cut them. All right. And then I'm going to come up here, and when we come in, and what did we do? We first made sure that it was present. Then we made sure that it was a whole number. Now we want to make sure that it's within range. All right. If it is within range, right here. So if the number is within range, rather than just returning true, now we know now that we've got a valid number. So we can set our at-bats and we can set our hits. Again, don't worry about this. We'll fix this in a second. All right. So right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make at-bats and I'm going to make hits global. All right. When we get done, believe me, if this isn't making any sense, I'm going to go through everything when we're all finished. Everything. All right. So static that's int at bats. We'll set that equal to 0. Static, right, Jeff? Static int hits equals 0. All right. Now, when we come down and we're in here, all right, we don't know if it's an at-bat or if it's a hit. In other words, we don't know if we should be using that or if we should be using that. But guess what? We do know because it's the text box that we put in there. All right. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to figure out, all right, which text box that we have in here. Okay. So this is the actual text box. Okay. And let's see, I'm going to come in here and I want to see what that value is. So I want to see what the value of text box is. I don't think I have any more errors in here. I could, but I don't think I have any more errors in my code. But this thing right here, this is within range. I want to see what the value of that text box is. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to do a message box. In fact, I'll do it 2 ways so you can see this. And I'll say the value of text box is, and I'm going to put in here plus text box dot toString. I want to see what that says. It might be just garbage. I don't know, but I want to see what that says. All right. So let me hit save all and let me run this. Again, all my errors are gone. So I'm going to just put in here 10. All right. And I want to calculate that this is within range. So let me put in here -4, which means it's going to be out of range. All right. The value it says in here was -4. All right. And it says that it's out of range, that the at-bats must be between 0 and 10,000, and it cleared. That's all working. All right. Now, I have to find a way to come in here and check to see whether what we passed in was hits or what we passed in was at-bats. All right. How do I do that? There's a lot of ways I can do it. I'm going to show you the way I'm going to do it. So when I call this is within range and I pass 0 and 10,000, I'm also going to pass in a string that's going to say at-bats. All right. It'll give me an error. Don't worry about that. We're going to fix it literally right now. And when we do this other one within range, I'm going to put in here hits. All right. Why did I do that? So when I come down here and I do this one, I'm going to have a string in here. I'm just going to call it type. All right. So now I should be able to come in here. And again, why do I care? It's because in here, what I want to be able to do is either this one or this one. But I don't know which one I want to convert. So I can come in here and say if type equal hits, let's do at-bats first because that's the one that's there. If it's equal to at-bats, now I can do that. Now I've set my at-bats variable. Else if type equal hits. All right, we'll fix this. And this should actually just be text box. All right. So if it's hits, convert that to double. Well, we'll fix that in a moment. All right. And we'll bring this one up. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Convert that to double. You know, convert a double to an int. That should be a 2int32. And I can just grab this, copy it here because it's the same thing. All right. Now, here's the test. Okay, to see if my average in here still works. But I'm going to have to cast this. And even though I don't have to, I'm going to cast them both. All right, I want to see if the program is still working or if I broke something. We'll go back and we'll test everything in here. But if I come in here and I say 4 at-bats and 2 hits. All right, so there's I got to remove that, but yeah, and then 500 average. All right, 1 at-bat. That's good. Clear, and let's do another one. 10 at-bats, and you've got 1 hit. Should give you an average of 100. There it is. All right. That's become the new low, and we've got 2 averages. Let's run it again, and we'll put an 8 in here. And now 800 is our highest, 100, it's working. All right. So let me very quickly run it again, and let's check our error conditions. We should have 6 error conditions. 3 for at-bats, 3 for hits. The first error condition for at-bats is at bats can't be empty. So if it's empty here, we should be getting that error, and we get it. All right. Second, if at bats is non-numeric, we should be getting that error here, and we are. Finally, all right, we said that the most was 10,000, so let's put in 10,001. Oops. So must be between 0 and 10,000, out of range. So they all worked. Now we'll put in here, I'll just put in 50, so we've got a number. Now we want to check the ones in here. I got to get rid of all these. Hits is a required field. We put something non-numeric in there. Hits must be an integer. And if we put a value in now that's greater than at bats, you can't have 50 at bats and get 100 hits. It doesn't make any sense. So, out of range input, hits must be between 1 and 50. Everything that's in here is working. So let's go back and look at the whole program and see what we did, and for lack of better verbiage, why we did it. All right. So we had 6 different routines. One that was called validate at bats, not empty. One that was called validate at bats is numeric. One that was called validate at bats is positive. Then we had similar ones for hits, not empty, hits, numeric, and hits, all right, in range. So we replaced this validate bats not empty, we replaced it with an is present, which goes in and checks and says, basically, if it's empty, show that message box. All right, set the focus, return false. Otherwise, return true. Okay. Then we went in, and the next one we checked was the whether or not it is numeric. So that's the is int 32. All right. And with the is int 32, what do we have? We're checking, and if you cannot parse it, if you can parse it, just return true. Everything's cool. It was a number. But if you can't parse it, all right, give us a message box that says, hey, it must be an integer. All right. And then finally, we replace the last one that's in here with an is within range. Okay. So at bats, all right, must be between 0 and 10,000. Now there's a way, I'm just having a brain fart right now, so I'm just passing the word at bats. There's a way to do it without having to pass that, but it's just the way I've done it. So now I can also get rid of that call that was in here, that call that was in here, and that call that was in here. All right. So what we've done is we have taken this program and knocked it down to 236 lines. All right. And if I come back, see if I can find it. I know you don't see my screen right now. Don't worry about it. What I'm trying to do here is look and see how much code we had in here originally. All right. And it looks like there were about 280 lines. All right. So, I mean, you look at it, you go, well, that didn't really buy you all that much. Yeah, but think about the main difference this is done like this. All right. Think of the main difference why this is a good thing. All right. And just to explain that to you, why that's a good thing is if I've got a problem that for some reason, when I put a value in here, okay, as example, or if I got a problem with it, now the same routine is handling both this and this. So I've replaced two two different methods, each of which was about 15 lines long, with one method that's 15 lines. So I saved 15 lines right there. Then in the similar way, to see whether or not it's, so we want to see whether or not it's present, we want to see whether or not it's an integer, and we want to see whether or not it's within range. So we've replaced 6 routines at an average of 15 lines each, or 90 lines. We've replaced it with 3 routines, average about 15 lines each, so 45 lines. So we've saved about 45 lines. And even though that may or may not seem like a really huge savings, when you think about it, it pretty much is. All right. A lot of times what happens when you start to refactor code, I mean, that's what this exercise was designed to be, was a code refactoring. All right. What you're doing is you're trying to see, okay, there's a principle in programming, all right, that's called DRY, D-R-Y. And it's an acronym that stands for do not repeat yourself. And with the routines that we had in there, with the 6 routines, basically they were almost all repetition. The two, the two that checked if something was present were the exact same routine, and except in one case we were checking at bats, in the other case we were checking hits. But the logic was exactly the same. The same thing with checking whether or not it was numeric. At bats and hits were basically the same way. And the only one that was a little bit different was the minimum and maximum, because we set at bats the minimum to 0 and the maximum to 10,000, but hits, the minimum is 0 and the maximum was the number of at bats. So that was a little different. But again, the idea is we've got a better program, okay? And it's better because it's smaller, it's more compact. And what's important about that too, and again, it may not sound like it's that much, but I remember the day when I started as a programmer, all right? And after a while, they gave me some responsibility, and they said, you're going to be responsible for this code right here. And they showed me what it was. And then they said, and there's some code that's similar to this, you're also going to be responsible for. And they showed me that. Together, the 2 sections of code that I was responsible for were somewhere in the range of about 2,500 lines of code, 2,500 lines. All right. And you might say, well, big deal. Well, the whole system that we were working on, it was a telephony system. All right. It was back in the olden days before cell phones. Yeah, it was that old. When you had the old rotary phones and you picked it up, you got dial tone, etc. But the whole package that we were working on was 5 million lines of code. So I was responsible for 2,500 of 5 million, which is not a big percent. But one of the things I tried to do when I wrote new code is I tried to go in and look at the existing code and say, hey, is there something I've already done that I could reuse? And if there was, sometimes I'd have to do some refactoring so that I was able to do that. All right. And again, like I said, it may not sound like a big thing. It is a big thing. All right. And if I could cut down, for example, let's say I could cut down 10% by refactoring. All right. So I went down from 2,500 and I removed 250 lines. Okay. So now it's 2,250 lines. Well, that's 250 less lines that I'm going to have to worry about maintaining. And since there's 250 less lines of code running, the program should technically run faster than it did previously. All right. So that was the first example. And Grant, I think you're the only one listening here. Does what we did make sense?
Yes. I fell behind on coding it myself, but I think I was just able to follow along with you afterwards.
Okay. All right. And when you have your test next Monday, that I will pass out Monday morning, I'm going to ask that you try to use these generic data validation methods on the test. Now, if you don't, the bottom line is, does it work? All right. But I'm going to ask that you try to do that. Okay. And if you don't, but you can validate it in your own way, you'll still get most, if not all, credit. All right. So let's take a break. It's 10:20 right now, just because I want to make sure I've got enough time to find the other example that I've already created, the temperature one. Let's come back at 10:35 and we will refactor that one as well. Okay. So I'll see you in 15 minutes.
Real quick, what page
Sure.
were those generic statements on?
Let me double check. I think it was 713, but let me check. Uh, 213. Page 213. They've got a method that checks, it's all code. A method that checks for a required field, a method that checks for a valid numeric format, and a method that checks for a valid range.
Thank you.
All right. Now, mine may not look exactly like theirs. All right. But if it does, it's darn close. Let's put it that way. Okay. All right. I'll see you at 10:35 then.
It's ranking on you.
Yes, sir.
He's delivering something from, Pat or nobody's here.
He should be upstairs, because that'd have to go to the automotive guy. He's supposed to check that in. He
Okay.
should be upstairs. Sorry, I teach in the information technology area.
Okay.
Sorry about that. All right, I'm back. I hope you're back. For whatever reason, I cannot find my copy of the temperature one that I done earlier, so shouldn't take too long. I'm gonna do it, basically, I'm gonna set it up right in front of you here. So I've created a new project called Temp Converter. All right, with a 4-minute, so I'm gonna immediately change the name of the form to FRM Temp Converter. Yes, I want to change it. Let's change the text here right away. So I've got AWD1100, Pretest number 2, temperature converter or something like that. Right, so that's been changed. Yeah, it looks good enough. Let's quickly, and I mean quickly, go through the stuff we always go through on here. So I'm going to change the back color. And I will make it whatever that is. All right, so it's not a difficult interface, so I'm going to set that up first very quickly here. So here's my first label. As always, I'm going to change the color on that, make it darker so that it stands out. And I'm going to change the auto size on there. All right, so I've got a label there. Have another one over here. And I will need 2 text boxes. There those are. I will need 2 buttons, actually 4 buttons. Right, as always, I will change the size of everything so it's easier to read for you and for me. Right, not the best interface I've ever made, but it looks totally acceptable in my opinion. So I'll lock it into place. All right, this will be TXT Fahrenheit. Temp. All right, and I just think I put on there far temp or something like that, so. There's that. This will be the Celsius temperature, so it'll be LBL Celsius temp. And it will say Celsius temp. All right, let's grab both of these and reposition where the text is aligned. Right, like that better. So this will be right here. Since this was TXT. Oh, and I really butchered the spelling on that one too. So let me fix that. I'm gonna just make it TXT FAHR temp. There we go. Oh, no, it's LBL. So that'll be LBL far temp, which will make this will now be TXT far temp. Right? And since this was LBL Celsius temp, this will be TXT Celsius temp. All right. This first button is BTN convert F to C. And the text on it is convert F to C. All right, this next one will be BTN convert C to F. And the text will be convert C to F. All right, and then our last 2 will be the ones that we always use. So the first one here will be BTN clear, and it will say clear. And finally, we'll have our exit, which will be called BTN exit. All right, so not a hard interface. And when we clear, we want to clear, clear, and set the focus. So that won't take long. All right, exit will be the stuff we always do. So the main code will go in here and it'll go in here. So we'll write that momentarily, but let's do the clear button first. So I will call this clear controls. All right, which I haven't written yet, so I'll put it right below. So private void clear controls. And I'll say txt Fahrenheit temp dot text equals double quote txt Celsius temp dot text equals double quote txt Fahrenheit dot focus. All right, we should be able to test that out right away. Yep, seems to work. Okay, good. All right, I'm going to quickly, as I always do, I'm going to steal my code for the exit button. Put that in here. I guess it'll go down here. No, it'll go. I guess it'll go right down there. There we go. So I should be able to change that one too, or test that one, I should say. So let's make sure that that works. All right, so those two are done. Before we put in this code, let's do the stuff we always do. In that, let's quickly go in and set the accept button. And it doesn't matter. It could be either one of the two buttons converting from one to the other, but I'm just going to do the F to C, or maybe I don't. I'll just do the one on the left. All right, and then for the cancel button, we'll, as always, have it be our clear button. We'll set our start position to center screen. And then quickly, let's set our tab order. So view tab order. We'll make this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Another view tab order. Let's do a file, save all, and quickly run it. Okay, that's working. Clear is working, and exit's working. Good. One last thing, and then we'll write the code. I'm gonna highlight both these. I'm going to make them so they're centered. So I'm going to go down to the text align. And now that's centered. Okay, so the first one is F to C. Okay, and the second one is C to F. Now, I didn't do something I wish I would have done, and that is I had copied in from the pretest all of the code that I'll need. So let me just put that in here right now. So these are the comments. All right, so this was write a GUI app that converts either a temperature input into Fahrenheit to Celsius or a temperature input in Celsius to Fahrenheit. Okay. Verify that either input's not empty, not numeric, and within range. So again, the same kind of stuff we just did. So we want to make 4 constants. Those are going to be min far, max far, min Celsius, and max Celsius. I will modularize the program. And the program run examples I'm not going to worry about because that is actually on the test itself. All right, and the formulas are shown here. All right, so same kind of thing that we did before, in that we want to make sure that's what? We want to make sure that's not empty. We want to make sure that's a number, and we want to make sure it's within range. We want to make sure that's not empty. We want to make sure that's numeric, and we want to make sure that's within range. All right. So it's a little different because we're handling two different cases here, but I'll go to this one first. All right. In fact, I should go and make these right away, these 4 constants. So I'll make those up at the top of the program. So declare and initialize program constants. It's going to give me errors, but I'll fix them in just a minute. So const, we'll make these decimal. Minfar, and that's going to be equal to -212. Then we'll have a const decimal maxfar, and that'll be equal to a +212. Oops, what I did there. Okay. Then we'll have our const decimal min Celsius. Let's just call it, that's fine. That's what it said in the specs. So we'll set that equal to -100. And finally, our const decimal max Celsius, and that will be equal to +100. All right, so those are our ranges, for lack of better words. We're going to use that when we are going in here and we are checking for the for our ranges. All right, so let's start as we have always done. We'll have here bool. And again, I call mine keep going, and that's going to be equal to is present, when we're going to put that in just a minute. And we want to put in there txt far temp. All right. So before we go on, let's quickly put those down here. I'm going to, again, add the same 3 things that we had earlier. All right, from page 213 in the book. So the first one I'll grab, in fact, let me just grab all 3 of them right now. And we'll change them as we get to them. So here's the 3. The first one is the, let's see. You got an is decimal, is in 32. We won't need the is in 32 this time. We will need the is within range. We will need the is decimal, and it looks as though I forgot to copy in the is present. So let me grab that. And indeed I did. Again, I just literally went to page 213 and copied all that in. All right. So we're saying it's a required field. I'm just going to change and make this real simple. I'm just going to say no input. Okay. So let's see, message box.show, text box.tag, my double quote there. So in other words, right now I should be able to check, and if there's nothing that's been put into the first text box, it should come back up and say whatever we said here, the name of the, oh, we didn't put in tags, so let's put in tags. So this one, this tag will be Fahrenheit. Hopefully I spelled that right. And this tag will be Celsius. All right. So let's do a file, save all, and see if that first one works. I think I've got everything in there for that. Nope. So it doesn't like something I did. So let's see. Oh, it still has that word title in there. So let me fix that. And the last one here is there. All right, so does the first one work? So if I put nothing in here, no input, Fahrenheit is a required field. All right, so that one's done. Okay. So we've done the first one. Okay. If keep going, and what does that mean? Well, you should be able to get this by now. This means that there was input in the first text box. That's all we know. We don't know if it's valid yet or not, but we know that there's some input in there. So we're going to say keep going equal, and now we're going to have to call is decimal. And again, we're going to pass in txt var.temp. All right. Now we will put an else in here, because else, what that means is what? This means that there was no input in the first text box. All right, so if that's the case, all we want to do is return. That's it. So let's go and look at the next one here. All right, so here is decimal, return true. All right, if we are able to parse it, yeah, okay. You've got here number, okay. And must be a decimal type, incompatible type. Yeah, it looks like it'll work. So if we come in here now with this one, and again, I may have to make some changes as we go along, but if we come in here, and now if there's nothing, we got that first error message. If we put in something non-numeric, we now get the second one. All right, Fahrenheit rather must be a decimal value. Okay, so those two are set. I also want to clear that, and I didn't, so let's clear that. So txt, or I'm sorry, text box dot text equals double quote, double quote. So that'll fix that. So we now have 2 of the 3 done. All right. Now, if keep going, and again, this means a number was inputted into the first text box. Now we have to do a range check. All right. So here we said there was something put in there. Now we must validate that it is numeric. All right. So if this is the case, now we must validate that it is within range. All right. So again, we'll say keep going equals it's decimal is within, okay, that would make sense, is within range. All right, and what does it need? Well, it needs the text box, so txt var temp. All right, then it needs the minimum and the maximum. Okay. All right. So that'll handle all of that. Okay. So if all of that is true, let's say if it's else in here, well, if that's the case, a non-numeric input was put into text box 1. So again, we'll just return. All right. Now, if we got down this far, so if keep going, Okay. What do we know? Well, we know that the value that we put in there was A, not empty, B, was numeric, C, was within range. So if we're going to keep going, now we can come in here and let's create our two variables. So we'll make a decimal, which we'll call far, and another decimal, which we'll call cell for Fahrenheit and for Celsius. All right. In fact, all we need in this one, because this is our, yeah, this is what we need. So this is the case. So we can say far equals, and we can do a convert to decimal like this, because it already passed all the other cases. And now we can say cell equals, and we have to do the formula that we were given. So it's this one right here. I'm going to have to change it a little bit from Fahrenheit to far, but it's no biggie. All right, so right there, make that far. And we'll say, I think it needs to be a 32.0 M, and this needs to be a 1.8 M. I think that should fix it. There we go. So we can say now txt Celsius temp dot text equals cell dot toString. We'll just do it to 2 decimal places, N2. All right. And then in just a minute, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to go the other way. So let's go in here and check this. Again, we've got our 3 error conditions. Nothing, that's being handled. Non-numeric, that's being handled. And out of range, that's being handled. All right. I didn't clear that. I've got to do that. So we'll clear that in a minute. So if we put 212 here, this should put 100.00 right there. Look, doesn't like something. So far equals convert to decimal, and it says unable to cast object of type text box. All right. Oh, dot text. My stupidity. Let's try it one more time. If we put 212 here and click, there you go, 100. So half of it's already done. All right. Now, I'm going to do some copying, but before I do, does everything I've done up till this point, I'm asking you this, does it all make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to literally copy every bit of code that I have here. Right there, and I'm going to put it into here. Now, I got to make massive changes, so I'm going to start making them. All right, this is all still okay, but this is keep going equal is present txt cell dot or cell temp. All right, in fact, now that I look at this, I like it better like that. So I'm going to be, like I said, I'm going to be doing the same exact thing, but every instance of Fahrenheit, I now have to change to Celsius. All right, so this means, let's see, what do we have here? Oh, I called it Celsius. That's what it is. Okay. So this means there was something input into the second text box. Now we must validate that it is numeric. So keep going. And again, this will be is decimal in there. All right, this means there was no input in the second text box. This means the number was inputted into the second text box. Now we must validate it's within range. So this is cell temp, and this is min Celsius and max Celsius. All right. And we can still go in. So if keep going, now this is going to have to change. This will be cell equals convert to decimal txt cell temp dot text. And we're going to do the Fahrenheit now. That's Celsius. So FAHR equals, and I'm going to grab the formula again. And that'll be cell. All right, so cell, and that's got to be an M, and that's got to be an M. All right. I think I'm finished, but let's just double check quickly. All right, I've already checked these, so I'm going to check this way now. So let me just put, I'm going to click this in here. No input, Celsius is a required field. Good. Non-numeric. No incompatible type, Celsius must be a decimal value. All right. And out of range, this one isn't, I forgot to put the clear in there, so I'm sure that won't clear. Out of range input, Celsius must be between negative and positive 100. So I'll fix that. Let's make this 100. In fact, let's make it negative 100. And this should come in here and be negative 212 if it works. Okay, something's wrong. That's okay, we'll fix it. First thing, although, I want to come back in here and in the, let's see. Are we resetting the text? There, we didn't. So txt, sorry, text box dot text equals double quote, double quote. Okay, that's all done. Now let's look at the last. Oh, I know what it is. We did the formula. We did the formula right here, but this should say, no, txt far temp equals far dot to string, because that's the conversion we just made. So let me save it and run it again. We're going this way. No input. Incompatible type. Oops, try that again. Out of range input. All right. 100 here. When I click this, it should say 212 right there if all is working. And it does. All right. Clearing and going the other way. Again, nothing. No input. Incompatible type must be a decimal. Oops. Out of range must be negative 212 to positive 212. Okay. And it appears as though everything here is working. So let's not fairly quickly just run through everything. All right. So here were our constants, and I didn't make those up. All right. They were given in the specs. I guess you could say that I did make them up. All right. So there those are. Then we want to convert. This is all the stuff that's in here. This is when we're converting from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So this code executes when the F2C button is clicked. And again, it is modularized in that, all right, in that we wrote separate routines for checking if it's something present, it's checking if there's something decimal, checking if something is within range. We could have taken all of this and put it into its own module as well. All right. So then the other one down here, just put that there. So what are we doing? Okay. We're saying this Boolean flag, we're setting it equal to is present. So is there a value in the Fahrenheit text box? If there was a value, then we're going to check to see whether or not it's a number. If it wasn't a value, we're just returning. All right. If there was something in there and if it was a value, then we want to check to make sure it's within range. Is it between negative 212 and positive 212? Again, otherwise we're returning. If we get down to here, we have a number in the first, in text box 1, and that number is within range, is between negative 212 and positive 212. Okay? So if that's the case, we come in and we know what Fahrenheit is, and we know this cannot fail because we wouldn't have gotten down to this point otherwise. So we convert it. We set the Celsius based on the formula we were given, and then we fill in the Celsius text box. This is just flipping the switch, so to speak. So this one executes when the C to F button is clicked. Again, just like we had before. And if you go in here and you take and replace every occurrence of the past one that said TXT far temp, if you replace it with TXT cell temp or Celsius temp, then everything up until this point is exactly the same. So is this, except rather than saying min far and max far, we say min Celsius and max Celsius. So again, if we get down to here, we have a number in text box 2, and that number is between negative 100 and positive 100. All right. Then we've got our 3, this will check for the presence. So this checks for presence or absence of a value in the text box. And it could be text box 1 or text box 2, depending on when or who's calling it. This next one, check for type number of a value in the text box. And the last one will check for valid range of the value in the text box. All right. So my question to you is there anything that we've just gone over here that does not make sense to you? Are you still there?
Yeah, no, it's clear.
Okay. So remember that what is due, I'm just want to go through this kind of quickly. All right. That as far as what is due, and let me bring that up. Change my share here. And I know I don't think you have any problems with what's due, but sometimes other people contact me. Do we have to do this? Do we have to do this? All right. These 4 are due on Sunday. Now, I did the calculator stuff for you. All right. In fact, now looking at it, okay, we've even got the data validation. I think we went through that. So really 6171 and 72 I've done. You have to go in to that income tax calculator for 62, all right, and add that. So that is part of what's due. That is the homework. All right, questions? All right, then let's quickly jump over and find those labs. I will change my share in just a moment. All right, for the chapter 6 stuff, the chapter 6 labs, you don't have to do that fortune cookie. We'll actually look at that one next week. Don't have to do LB3. All right. You do have to do this college admission one, and it's the one you've already done, but you're going to be adding exception handling into this. All right. I got an email from one of the students saying that they were having problems with this one. All right, this was that vowel count. Now, it's not a hard thing to do. What you want to do is put this in there as a string. Now, all a string is it's a bunch of characters. So if I put in there my name, Jeff, that's really the character J followed by the character E, followed by the character F, followed by the character F. So what you want to do then is you want to go through this a character at a time. And if it's an A or an E or an I or an O or a U, you want to add 1 to a variable like vowel count. And then when you're all done, you want to print that out. All right, so hopefully that makes at least some sense. Now, a couple people have told me they had some problems with this one. All right. Always take a look in here. All right, so what's the area? 1260. All right, so what is that? What is 1260? Well, it's the area. I don't know if that's a mistake, if that should be, I would think the area is length times width, which would make it 1200. All right, so that's fine. If that's supposed to be 1200, I don't care. All right, and then calculate the paint estimate. It tells you that in here. All right, it's $6 per square foot. All right, so if you've got a total area of 1260 here and you multiply that by 6, you should get this. Again, hopefully at least that makes sense. And for any of you watching, be it live or on tape, if something doesn't make sense, please email me right away. I'm going to try to be home at least most of the day on Sunday, especially Sunday evening when I tend to get a lot of emails. So you have to do the vowel count. You have to do this one. All right, what's next? This credit card masker. This is a lot easier than most people seem to make it. All right, so it says replace any number or letter with a pound sign other than the last 4. Well, I mean, all you're going to have to do is if you tell them you got to set it up like this, you want to go back and you want to do a replace, look at your string functions. All right. But you can just count otherwise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then go replace any number with this. All right. Okay. This one is write a GUI that estimates the cost of a custom built desk based on factors. This is going to be very, very, very similar to the one that we just looked at with the square footage stuff. It'll be very similar. This last one, don't even do this one. We'll go through this one as a class, okay? Maybe I should have done that one earlier. But if you've already done it, hey, feel free to turn it in. I'll look at it, but I won't grade this one. So LB9 here, all right, this one you don't have to do. We will take a look at it ourselves. All right. And this one, make a digital version. We'll do this one together. Don't worry about that one. What I'm trying to do is I'm not going to lie to you. We started out with a total of about 14 in the class. We're down to 8. And of the people who have dropped, several of them have said, I just don't have time to do all this homework. So I'm trying to make the homework manageable. All right. I will tell you that one of the people who is in this class who has turned in everything and has turned all of it in on time and very well done is working 2 jobs and between 80 and 100 hours a week. So when people say, well, I can't do this, yes, you can. All right, because I don't know how he finds time to do everything that he does, but he does. All right, so let's see. The other one is the chapter 7. The BMI we've done as a class, but I still want you to do it and turn it in. You don't have to worry about making that red unless you want to. You can look it up and probably figure that out. This order exception, you want to check to make sure that number is between 100 and 999. You want to check to make sure that, what's that?
I still see that chapter 6 labs on the screen.
Gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate you letting me know. All right. So for the first one in chapter 6 or chapter 7, I should say, LBO1 BMI, I want you to do that one. Even though we did it together, you can go back and look at the notes then. All right. This one, this order exceptions, you want to make sure that what you put in here is between 100 and 999. What's in here is between 1 and 12, and what's in here is between 1 and 30. All right. If they all come, then you say the order is valid. Now, you want to make sure that's not empty and is numeric. That's not empty and is numeric. That's not empty and is numeric. The range on that one is 100 to 999. The range on that one is 1 to 12. The range on that one is 1 to 30. I'd suggest you go in and make 6 constants. Min item number, max item number, min quantity, max quantity, min delivery days, max delivery days. And then use the 3 different, the is present, the is int 32, and the is within range functions. And that really shouldn't take you that long. All right. And what else do we have in here? Forget this decoder ring. Okay. I don't agree with Mr. Smith. I think it's kind of silly. So you will do these 2 on this page. All right. Any questions on those? All right. Then the last thing that you must do is you must do the written test. I don't think I have to bring those up, but you have to do the written test for chapters 6 and 7. All right. And again, when you are working on this stuff, I can't say this too many times. When you're working on this stuff, if something does not make sense, you have to get a hold of me right away and let me know. All right. That's all I can tell you. Now, when you take the test next week, there's only one problem. You're going to make a form that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 5 fields that you have to input. All right. And of those 5 fields, 2 of those 5 fields are numeric fields. So you're going to have to run the is present, the is decimal, and the is within range. So if you do those problems that are like that, you should be able to ace this test, and it really shouldn't take you that long. Honestly, I'm not just saying that. And sometimes people say, oh, you're just saying that. No, I'm not. All right. So Grant, you're the only one on. I appreciate you being here. Do you have any questions on anything? Do you need me to go back over anything that we've gone over today?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, well, as always, with you and anybody else, if you have questions, please email me. My class this afternoon is a lab. All right, I do have one person I'm going to have a Teams meeting with. I don't know when he gets a hold of me, but I will do the best to answer the questions that you have as soon as I possibly can. I'm at the main campus today, so I'll be traveling back home between 4 and 4:30. All right, usually on Fridays, it's a night my wife likes to go out to dinner, but I should be home, I would guess, by 7 o'clock or so. I will be in and out tomorrow, and I will try to be in most of the day on Sunday. If anybody has questions, concerns, or whatever, please, especially those of you who are behind, try to get caught up as quickly as you can. Grant, again, thanks for being here, and I will see all of you or talk to you on Monday. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.